Hey, fifth grade, it's your last ever fifth grade art class. I hope you're ready for this. Today's lesson is a special request by one of your fellow students, or maybe you if you're watching. And we're going to be learning about shadow and depth today. So you will need a couple of pencils if you, let's start over again. Hey fifth grade, how are you? This is your very last ever fifth grade art lesson. So I hope you're ready. Today's lesson is a special request by someone in your class. We will be learning about shadow and depth, and you're going to need paper. Can I just say to you though, small paper, because I'm going to do two little demos, and one is difficult, so let's use small. And you're going to need a pencil. If you have just a number 2 pencil, that's fine. If you have any art pencils at all, and you have something called a 4B, which is for shading, you could use that if you have it. If you don't, just a normal number 2 pencil like what we use for school is fine, not a mechanical pencil. And if you have something like an ultra fine point Sharpie, like the really skinny ones, any color, or if you have this, which is a micron pen, I don't know, can you see that? A micron pen, and this is a size 0.8. You probably don't have that, but a couple of you guys do, I think. So if you have neither of those, try a ballpoint pen. Just any old pen is fine, because I kind of want you to do one of them in pen just for fun to see how it goes. Okay, so would you please gather those items? I'll meet you back here in a minute and we will get started. Okay, we're back. We're on super close zoom in on this one so that you can really see what I'm doing. Our final project will look something like this. Okay, and you saw on the assignment that I posted in Google Classroom a way more intricate version of this. So I'm not expecting you to try that, but I wanted to post it in case you find out that you like this and you want to. So what this is 3 different layers. So that shows a lot of depth, and we use shading to create depth in this one. All it is 3 shapes. Okay, so we're going to look at these 3 big shapes right here. All right, so imagine those as holes cut in this layer of paper. Okay, so this layer of white paper represents layer 1. So all we did was we cut 3 holes in it. Okay, then the next layer down is this one right here. So it's shaded very lightly. This layer, it connects over here, and over here. Okay, so that's layer number 2, and that has holes cut in as well. So here's a hole cut in layer number 2 right here. Here's a hole. Here's a hole right here. And here's a hole. It gets really kind of tricky. It makes you kind of dizzy. All right, so that's layer 2. Just think of layer 2 as being light. So layer 1 is white, layer 2 is light, and layer 3 is here. And this is, we're going to call this, actually, let's call this light, medium, and dark. Okay, so layer 3 is dark. The very, very, very far background where there are no holes cut would be the darkest of all. And that's how we're going to call that one. That's like the background, okay? So we have the first layer is light, the second layer is medium, the third layer is dark, and then we're calling that background, okay? So let's break it down. That's why I want you to start small. Okay, give me 3, let's start with 3. 3 shapes. Let's make them big. Okay, so here's one. Here's another one right here. And why don't we have one that just goes off the edge of the page, so it'll be kind of like this, and then it goes off the edge of the page. Okay, so now you have created 3 holes in layer 1, which was white or light. Okay, the first layer. Now, to make these holes stand out, I want you to please shade around the inside of them. This is what I mean. Thicken up that line a little bit, just shade a little. Okay, if you want to get fancy, you can even make your shading kind of get a little bit lighter as it gets outward. So here we have very dark near the line, and then it kind of lightens up a little bit. Okay, so I don't want to shade this whole entire thing because it will take a long time and you'll have a lot of screen time today, and we need your brains and your eyes and your bodies to not always have so much screen time. Okay, so imagine that I have shaded all three. I'm just going to do this one. Okay, so I've shaded one, but you're pretending I've shaded inside of all three. Okay, did you see how I turned the paper? That makes it easier for me. If it makes it easier for you, by all means, turn the paper when you're shading. I just think sometimes it's easier to have that angle instead of like trying to come around here with my hand. Okay, so now we will have three outlines shaded there. Now we need to draw layer 2. Okay, so we cut the holes for that layer 1. Now layer 2, remember that was this lighter shading here. I got to get the names right. I'm going to call it light, which is white. I'm writing it down. Medium, which is that second layer, and I'm calling it dark, which is the third layer. So I wrote it off to the side. Okay, now we need to draw the middle layer, layer number 2. So you're going to make some more shapes. Imagine now, as you draw this second shape, it may continue. Let's go like this so you can see off the edge of the page. So let's say the shape starts over here. I'm not really drawing it, but here it comes. It's crossing through here. All right, and maybe it goes off the edge of the page, but we really only care about that. That's what you've just cut into it. Okay, now let's do one into here. So let's say we have a shape that's coming up here. Maybe it gets tricky. Maybe it's going to cross over into that one and come back around over here, and then it goes off the edge of the page. Okay, and now if we have to turn this, if it's easier, let's do one like this. Maybe it starts here, it picks up, crosses over, comes in through here, goes behind, and comes out over here. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 shapes. Now I have to slow myself because this is going to get tricky. All of the stuff that is, imagine as though layer 2 is a piece of paper, so you've just cut these pieces out. Everything that's left, you need to shade. Okay, so that was that middle or light layer that we talked about. Okay, so it's the middle layer, it receives a light amount of shading. So if you do that first, then you're going to look like you have a piece of kind of lightly shaded paper with 3 holes cut out of it, set behind our first piece of white paper that had holes cut out of it. Okay, so sometimes you have to stand back with this one because your mind will play tricks on you and you'll say, is that layer 1? Is that layer 2? I can't remember. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking and shade this really fast. Okay, so now you have your first layer and you have your second layer with the holes cut in. Now these holes that you cut in, you're going to darken those just like you did those first holes. The reason that you're doing that is kind of like to give us the illusion that those holes are actually casting a shadow onto the layer of paper that is even below that, the third layer. Is this confusing enough for you yet? Are you glad that you requested this? Or are you going crazy at home? Okay, so again, you're going to just shade all of these. I'm only going to do 2 of them for sake of time because I care about your brains and eyes. I don't want you on the screens constantly, even if it is for art. Okay, and then I would have, oh, I'll just do it real quick. Here we go. I'm shading this other one too. Okay, so now we have layer 1, which is white. We have layer 2, which is lightly shaded. Now we got to get layer 3. So Let's put some other shapes. How about if there is one in here? And remember, it's going to go behind this lightly shaded, and let's say it comes out here maybe, it comes out over here, and then it kind of goes back up and it would go over here, okay? And let's just make it easy and have one that comes this way, and it's going to cut through here, and it's going to come down here and be like this. You can do as many as you want, but I'm trying to make it easy for us. Okay, so forget about those holes you just did for right now. Let's look at the paper that they're cut from. So this section right here would be paper that is cut from. So you need to shade that darker than this. If you're not sure what darker is, go right next to it, like right here, they would touch. You want this one right here to be darker. Now sometimes when you're darkening this up, it means you might have to darken up some of those outlines on some of these cutouts we did so that they don't blend in together. So let me show you this little section right here. If I'm shading that, I'm really going to need to darken this right here so that it stands out against the color of that other shading. Okay, so because I'm going quick, I'm not doing my best shading. I know you will, but I'm going quickly here. Okay, so we're shading that, getting that darker than that middle layer there. And then making darker if we need to. Okay, now this right here would be dark, and we're going to have to fix these outlines. If you do this with color, you could have all of the outlines of the shapes done in dark, but you could do your shading in different colors, like you could have a blue one and a red one or a yellow one, something like that. Okay, so this is needing to be darker. This little bit right here is darker. I think if you can wrap your mind around the concept that you're cutting holes out of 3 different shades of paper, that might help you if you feel like you get a little bit mixed up. Now, what do I want to tell you next? The next thing that I'm going to tell you is that, actually this is going to have to be even darker because I kind of started getting dark here. You have now these 3 cutouts, the last 3 cutouts that you made, those shapes, they need to be filled in with your darkest possible dark that you can do with your pencil, because like on this one, okay, that represents the very background. Like let's say your tablecloth is black. This is your tablecloth, it's black. Then you're laying those 3 different sheets, white, medium, and darker shading. Okay, so this is why I talked about the 4B pencil. This pencil lets you shade even darker. So now you would go with these shapes and really, really darken them up. If something happens and you find that you shaded something darker than you wanted, like I did, why not use your eraser and lift it up a little bit, like that, so that you can tell the difference between that background darkest dark and the dark of your tablecloth, or your background, your very background, okay? All right, so I think you get the idea. Let's look at this one again, okay? I know I keep saying it, but just to get your mind wrapped around it, we have a piece of paper that is white. That's layer 1. Underneath that, we had a piece of paper that we cut shapes out of that is medium shading. That's layer 2. And underneath that, we had a piece of paper that had kind of almost all the way dark shading. That's layer 3. And all these holes that are left that have not yet been shaded are all like the ultimate background tablecloth color, okay? So give it a try, stay with small, and you'll be happier. Okay, so that's exercise 1, or project 1. Project 2, if you want to do it, is 2 different types of shading for fun. And this will give you, instead of having a flat shape like a circle, you will then learn how to create shading with value, meaning lights and darks, to make this round. It will become a sphere, which is a form. A shape is flat, a form is round. Okay, so I have ahead of time traced a circle on each side. For the basic shading one, I want you to imagine that light is coming from this direction. So that means that your sun or your lamp or whatever is going to fill in, is going to shine right over here, so we have the lightest area. So I'm going to just lightly do a little oval shape in here to remind myself that I don't want any shading in there. That's where my lightest light is going to be. And then over here it is going to be pretty dark. So let's start here with a dark. I have my pencil held on the side and I'm starting my dark. I like to do, I know it looks like I'm going back and forth, but actually I'm doing little oval shapes like this with my pencil as I shade. The reason why I do that is because it's way easier to blend when you're using ovals like that and you don't get a bunch of lines and kind of choppiness in your shading. So I like to use ovals. And then you can go back over things. So if you need to blend, you can go over it with more ovals. That sounds funny. Go over it with ovals. Okay, so now as we're creeping closer and closer to that area of light, you're going to shade less and less, meaning lighter and lighter, and you want to achieve a smooth blend from that darkest dark into our very lightest light, which is in fact white. Make sense? So if you get all the way up here to the edge and you find that you need to go back down towards the bottom and have it be darker, you can always darken that up. Sometimes darkening things up is easier than lightening them by lifting with an eraser. Remember when I gave you that project where you guys had to erase away things? I think it was 5th grade. So it's easier to add dark than it is to erase away stuff. Okay, and again, I'm going pretty fast. If you were looking at something, you can look this stuff up online too. You can get some ideas of shapes, and you would be able to see that in fact there would be a reflection from the tabletop that it's sitting on onto the object, and there would be a reflection of the object onto the table. So there's a back and forth exchange of light that happens there. Okay, and as you look at this, every once in a while step back, and I see a dark and a middle and a light. It's not a smooth enough transition for me, so I'm going to be really picky and I'm going to keep going back over things to really have an even blend. You also, I didn't tell you this before, but you want this ball to be sitting on something. It's best to use a ruler, but I don't have one handy, so I've just now put it on a table by drawing that line behind it. And the light is coming from here, which would cast a shadow. The shadow would come like this, okay, behind your shape. And I don't want to get too technical for us because I'm not there with you in person, but what you would do is you're going to shade this. Your shadow is lighter the farther away it gets from the object. So right up here close in towards the object, your shadow is going to be darker. And then it's going to fade away to lighter as it gets out here by my finger. Sorry, I apologize for this messy shading. I'm just using a number 2 pencil because I think that's what most people have at home. I didn't want to get too fancy with my number 4 or my number 6. If you take advanced art, when you're a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader, you'll learn more about number 4, number 6 pencils if we do fine art, unless we're doing digital art, who knows. Okay, now if you want, you can darken this up. There is more that we're not going to do, but know that if you were really in a drawing class, you would need to be making a reflection back and forth between these two objects. But we're not going to go into that today because that's too much and it'll be a long video and we don't want that. Okay, so just watch your transition here. Make sure you have a real smooth transition between light and dark. I'm going over things. People think that they have to get it right on the first pass, but when you're shading, you're always going back over. I don't like what I just did right there. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to show you on this. Sorry, my phone is ringing. One last thing, it kind of looks nice. Make sure your eraser is clean before you do this, but it kind of looks nice if you lift out some of this. If you erase some of that away, it really gives you the impression that there is very much light on there if some of your edge disappears. Okay, so that's that one. Now let me quickly turn over to the other side and show you what I want to do with this ink pen. It's the same type of thing, but we're going to do a different shading called Controlled Scribble. Okay, so first let me give it a desktop real fast. And then Controlled Scribble is, here's the light coming from here. It's almost like you're writing in cursive writing, okay? So it looks like this. It's like you're just scribbling, but you're scribbling with a purpose. You're not just going crazy. We're going to still lay in all these darks that we wanted to have here, and I'm just kind of, it's almost like you can think of making little stars, or you could write your name over and over. But if you scribble like this and you go on top of it over and over in the same area, it becomes darker, okay? Now, if you make those scribbly marks, like if this is a scribbly mark, let's just say, if you make them farther apart from each other, then it gives you that transition from dark to light. Here's what I mean. They're tight, they're close together, but now I'm making the marks larger. I'm not pressing as hard with my pen. Sometimes it's just a little line. I gotta save that light there. Up at the top. Okay. I think sometimes it's easier if you start with either the dark and go all the way across or the light and go all the way across. If you spend too much time bouncing back and forth, you get lost a little bit. This one isn't as great as I want it to be because I'm in a hurry. But I did, I'll put a sample up. I think I did put a sample up for you so that you could see somebody who really took a lot of time. But I'm just showing you that you can do the same thing, and then here comes the shadow. Let's give it shape there. Ignore those scribbles that I put down here. That was just to show you something. But you can see if you scribble over in the same spot, it becomes darker. And if you want to really define that edge more, you can do smaller, tighter scribbles right up close to each other. If you're thinking of them as stars, you can make the stars smaller. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so those are your projects. It would be fun to see them, so hopefully you'll send them to me, and if not, have a great summer. It was really good having you in class, and I will see you next year. Thank you.